I watched my husband's lips press against hers in the middle of my birthday party, in my house, surrounded by my family. But here's what he didn't know. I'd been planning this moment for 3 months. And what I did next? It didn't just break him. It destroyed everything he'd ever built. If you love watching karma serve cold justice, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because this story gets darker than you think. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. My name is Janelle, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I was living the dream. I'm talking about the kind of life people scroll past on Instagram and feel that little twist of envy in their chest. My husband Trevor was a real estate mogul worth $8 million. We had the mansion with the circular driveway, the cars that turned heads, the walk-in closet that could fit a small family. From the outside, we were untouchable, golden, perfect. But here's the thing about perfect. It's usually just really good lighting hiding all the cracks underneath. Trevor started changing about 6 months before my 32nd birthday. Little things at first. He'd come home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, something sweet and cheap, not the Chanel I wore. He'd be glued to his phone at dinner, smiling at texts he'd angle away from me. When I'd reach for him in bed, he'd mumble something about being tired and turn his back to me. The warmth we used to have, it went cold, ice cold. I'm not stupid. I know what distance looks like when it's wrapped in lies. So I did what any woman with a brain and a bad feeling would do. I started paying attention. I found receipts for jewelry I never received, hotel charges on credit card statements for nights he claimed he was working late at the office. And then there were the texts. Oh God, the texts. I saw one pop up on his phone while he was in the shower. It said, "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Wear that thing I like." My stomach dropped so hard, I thought I'd be sick right there on our Egyptian cotton sheets. I could have confronted him right then. I could have screamed, thrown his clothes on the lawn, set his precious golf clubs on fire. But something in me went quiet instead. Cold. Calculated. I hired a private investigator named Lawrence, a former cop with gray hair and kind eyes who'd seen this story 1,000 times before. I told him everything, and he told me to sit tight. 3 weeks, he said. 3 weeks, and I'd have everything I needed. Those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. Every time Trevor kissed me goodbye, I tasted betrayal. Every time he said, "I love you," I heard the lie underneath it. But I smiled. I played the devoted wife. I cooked his favorite meals. I laughed at his jokes. I was perfect. Because I knew something he didn't. I was building a case. When Lawrence finally came back with the evidence, I sat in my car in a parking lot and opened the envelope. Photos, videos, bank statements, and her. Brinley. 26 years old, blonde hair, bright smile, and absolutely shameless. She was his so-called business associate. They'd been seeing each other for 7 months. 7 months of dinners, hotels, weekend trips he'd told me were conferences. 7 months of him touching her the way he used to touch me. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The rage was too hot, too all-consuming. It burned through every tear before it could fall. And that's when the plan formed in my mind, crystal clear and beautifully cruel. I was going to give myself a birthday party, a big one, the kind people talk about for years. And Trevor? He was going to give me the perfect gift, his own destruction. I just had to set the stage and wait for him to walk right into it. The night of my birthday party, our house looked like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers throwing light across marble floors, champagne towers sparkling in every corner, a live jazz band playing smooth melodies that floated through rooms packed with people. I'd invited everyone, and I mean everyone. Family, friends, Trevor's business partners, his entire social circle. And yes, I made sure Brinley got an invitation too. Trevor's face when I told him to invite his business associates was priceless. He stuttered something about keeping business and personal separate, but I just smiled sweetly and said, "Baby, it's my birthday. I want to celebrate with everyone important in our lives." He couldn't argue with that without exposing himself. I wore red that night, a dress that hugged every curve, the kind of red that demands attention and doesn't apologize for it. My sister Imani had done my makeup, smoky eyes, perfect lips, skin glowing like I didn't have a care in the world. When I looked in the mirror before heading downstairs, I barely recognized myself. I looked powerful, untouchable, like a woman who had her whole life figured out. If only they knew I was one heartbeat away from burning everything down. Trevor played his part beautifully. He worked the room like the charming businessman everyone thought he was, shaking hands, telling jokes, his arm around my waist for photos. He whispered, "Happy birthday, baby," in my ear, and I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's amazing how quickly love can turn into something else when you know the truth. Every touch felt like a performance. Every smile felt like a mask. And I matched him beat for beat, playing the grateful wife, the happy birthday girl, while my eyes tracked every movement he made. That's when I saw her. Brinley stood in the corner near the bar, sipping white wine, wearing a dress that was just a little too tight, a little too revealing for someone who claimed to be just a colleague. She had this smirk on her face, like she was in on some private joke. My sister Imani leaned close to me and whispered, "Girl, who invited that pale trick in the corner? She's been eye-fucking your husband all night." I took a slow sip of my champagne and said, "I did." Imani's eyes went wide, but before she could ask questions, I squeezed her hand and said, "Just trust me." I excused myself, telling everyone I needed to check on the catering in the kitchen. But really, I positioned myself where I could see everything. I stood in the doorway, partially hidden by shadows, and I watched. Trevor glanced around the room, thinking no one was paying attention. Then he moved. He crossed the floor with purpose, weaving through clusters of people until he reached her. Brinley's face lit up when she saw him. They stood close, too close for business associates, too close for anything innocent. And then it happened. He leaned in and kissed her. Right there, in my house, at my birthday party, with my family just rooms away. His hand slid to her waist, familiar and intimate, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Like I didn't exist. Like our vows meant nothing. Like I was nothing. The world stopped spinning. I couldn't hear the music anymore, couldn't hear the laughter or the clinking glasses. All I could hear was the sound of my own heart shattering into a million pieces, each one cutting deeper than the last. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I steadied myself against the doorframe and hit record. 15 seconds. That's all I needed. 15 seconds of proof that would change everything. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I forced them back. Not yet. Not here. I had work to do. I walked back into that party like I was floating. My legs moved on autopilot while my brain screamed at me to run, to hide, to cry. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I picked up a champagne glass and a butter knife. The sound of crystal ringing out cut through the music, through the conversation, through everything. Within seconds, the entire room fell silent. Every single pair of eyes turned to me. Trevor's face went pale. He knew. Somehow, he knew. I smiled my brightest smile and said, "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate with me. It means the world to have all of you here. My family, my friends, the people who truly matter." I let that word hang in the air for a moment. And I especially want to thank my husband, Trevor, who has made this birthday so incredibly unforgettable. My voice was sweet as honey, but there was poison underneath it. Trevor started moving toward me, weaving through the crowd, and I could see the panic starting to build in his eyes. "Janelle," he said quietly, reaching for my arm. "Baby, let's not do this here." I stepped back from his touch like it burned. "Do what, Trevor? Celebrate my birthday? But we're just getting to the best part." I raised my voice so everyone could hear. "Trevor, sweetheart, could you come up here, please? I want everyone to see us together." He had no choice. 50 pairs of eyes were on him. He walked up beside me, jaw tight, that fake smile plastered across his face. I could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. "I saw something interesting tonight," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "In the hallway, just a few minutes ago." Trevor leaned in close, his voice a harsh whisper. "Janelle, don't. Please don't do this." But I was done with his pleading, done with his lies. I spoke louder, clearer. "Don't what, Trevor? Don't tell everyone how I just watched you kiss your mistress? At my birthday party? In my house?" The gasps that rippled through the room were immediate and sharp. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the marble floor, and the sound felt appropriate. Everything was breaking. Trevor's mask cracked completely. "You're drunk," he stammered, looking around desperately at the crowd. "You're embarrassing yourself, embarrassing both of us." I pulled out my phone, and his face went from pale to gray. "Oh, I'm not drunk, baby. I'm clear-headed for the first time in months." I connected my phone to the TV screen we'd set up for the photo slideshow. "Let me show everyone exactly what I saw." The video played, crystal clear, high definition, Trevor's lips on hers, his hand on her waist, the intimacy of it, the betrayal of it, all of it right there for everyone to see. The room exploded. My mother gasped and started crying. My father's face turned to stone, his hands curling into fists. Imani screamed, "You piece of shit!" and started toward Trevor, but her husband held her back. Trevor's business partners looked horrified, already calculating how this would affect their reputations. And Brinley? She tried to slip toward the door like the coward she was, but I was faster. I moved through the crowd and blocked her path. "Oh no, honey," I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You wanted to be with him so badly? You wanted to be seen? Well, let's make sure everyone sees you now." She tried to push past me, but I stood firm. That's when she snapped. "He was going to leave you anyway," she shouted, mascara already starting to run. "You're boring, Janelle. You're cold. He told me everything. He said you don't even—" My hand moved before my brain caught up. The slap echoed through the entire house, louder than the music ever was. Her head snapped to the side, and she stumbled back, hand flying to her reddening cheek. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then chaos erupted. People were shouting, pulling us apart. Trevor was yelling my name. Brinley was crying, screaming about pressing charges. My father stepped between us, his voice booming. "Get out, both of you! Get out of my daughter's house before I throw you out myself!" Trevor grabbed my arm, his grip tight and desperate. "We need to talk about this in private. Janelle, please." I ripped my arm away with strength I didn't know I had. "Private?" I laughed, and it sounded broken even to my own ears. "You kissed her in my house, in front of my family. You humiliated me in the one place I should have been safe. There is no more private, Trevor. You made sure of that." He looked around the room at all the faces staring at him with disgust, with disappointment, with pure rage. His world was crumbling in real time, and he finally understood that there was no talking his way out of this one. My father stepped forward, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "I said get out. Now." Trevor stood there for one more second, looking at me like he expected me to save him, like I was supposed to be the one to fix this mess he created. When I said nothing, when I just stared back at him with ice in my eyes, something in him broke. He grabbed his keys and stormed toward the door. Brinley followed behind him, still holding her face, mascara streaking down her cheeks like war paint. The door slammed behind them, and the sound felt like the closing of a chapter. The party was over. People started leaving quietly, awkwardly, some stopping to hug me, to whisper support, to promise they'd call. When the last guest left and it was just me and my family, I finally let myself feel it. All of it. The humiliation, the rage, the betrayal, the heartbreak. I sank onto the couch and my mother wrapped her arms around me. "Baby girl," she whispered. "What do you need?" I looked up at her with dry eyes and a voice that didn't shake. I need his lawyer's number, and I need him to pay for everything. My father smiled for the first time that night, grim and proud. That's my girl. The morning after the party, I didn't cry. I didn't stay in bed wallowing in self-pity like Trevor probably expected. Instead, I sat in my lawyer's office at 8 a.m. sharp, stone-cold sober and ready for war. Simone was one of the best divorce attorneys in the state, a black woman with silver-streaked locks and a reputation for taking cheating husbands to the cleaners. She sat across from me with a notepad and a smile that told me she'd been waiting for this call. "Tell me everything," she said. And I did. But here's what Trevor didn't know. Here's what made him so stupid, so arrogant, so utterly blind. I hadn't just been collecting evidence for 3 weeks. I'd been preparing for 3 months. Every strange receipt I found, I photographed. Every suspicious credit card charge, I documented. Every late-night business meeting, I tracked. When Lawrence, my private investigator, handed me that envelope, it wasn't just photos of Trevor and Brinley. It was a complete financial autopsy of my husband's dirty little secrets. Trevor had been hiding money, lots of it. He'd opened offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, thinking I was too trusting or too stupid to notice. He'd been funneling company profits into shell corporations, skimming off the top of deals he made with his business partners. And the jewelry? The hotel rooms? The weekend trips to Miami and Vegas he'd taken Brinley on? All of it paid for with company funds. He'd been committing fraud, and I had every single transaction documented, time-stamped, and ready to bury him with. Simone's eyes lit up as I laid it all out on her desk. "Janelle," she said, leaning back in her chair with something close to admiration, "you've just handed me a nuclear bomb." I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. "Good, I want to use it." We went through the prenup together, line by line. Trevor had been so confident when we signed it 5 years ago. He thought it protected him, thought that if things ever went south, he'd walk away with most of his fortune intact. But there was one clause he'd forgotten about, probably because he never thought he'd be dumb enough to trigger it. Infidelity voids the entire agreement, every single word. I filed for divorce that afternoon. Not just divorce. I demanded 60% of all marital assets, the house, the cars, the investment properties, the stock portfolio. Everything we'd built together, I was taking the majority of it. And because of his fraud, because of the documented evidence of him using business money to fund his affair, I also sent a detailed report to his business partners. I didn't do it out of spite, though spite definitely played a part. I did it because they deserved to know they were in business with a thief. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Within 48 hours, Trevor's phone was exploding with calls from angry partners, from lawyers, from the IRS. Yes, the IRS. Because when you document someone's financial fraud thoroughly enough, federal agencies tend to take notice. His business partners called an emergency meeting and voted him out. Just like that, the company he'd spent 15 years building was no longer his. 3 of his biggest clients dropped him within a week, not wanting to be associated with a cheater and a fraud. His reputation in the real estate world, the one thing he valued almost as much as money, was destroyed. And Brinley? Oh, sweet, stupid Brinley. The moment Trevor's bank account started getting frozen, the moment the luxury dried up and reality set in, she disappeared like smoke. She stopped answering his calls, blocked him on social media, and from what I heard through the grapevine, she'd already moved on to some other rich man with a wedding ring and a wandering eye. Trevor tried to reach out to me a dozen times, calls I didn't answer, texts I didn't read. He even showed up at the house once, pounding on the door, begging me to talk to him. Security escorted him off the property while I watched from the upstairs window, sipping tea, feeling absolutely nothing. The man who'd kissed another woman at my birthday party was now living in the same cramped apartment he'd rented when I first met him. The Porsche he loved? I kept it. It looked better in my driveway anyway. His designer suits? Donated. His golf clubs? Sold. I erased every trace of him from my life like he'd never existed at all. And every single night, I slept peacefully in our king-sized bed, knowing that karma hadn't just knocked on his door. She'd kicked it down and moved in permanently. 6 months later, I barely recognized my own life. And I mean that in the best possible way. The house was still mine. I'd bought Trevor out using his own money from the settlement, which felt like poetic justice. But more than that, I'd rebuilt myself from the inside out. I started my own luxury event planning company, using all those skills I'd developed throwing parties for Trevor's business associates. Turns out, I was good at it. Really good. Within 3 months, I had a client list that would make established planners jealous. I was booked solid, creating beautiful moments for people who actually appreciated the work, the artistry, the attention to detail. My family was closer than ever. Imani and I had wine nights every Thursday where we'd laugh until our stomachs hurt. My parents stopped by on Sundays for dinner, and the house felt full again. Full of real love, real laughter, real peace. I'd forgotten what peace felt like until Trevor was gone. It was like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. One random Tuesday afternoon, I stopped at my favorite coffee shop downtown. I was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, hair pulled back, no makeup, just living my life. I ordered my usual vanilla latte and turned around to find a table. That's when I saw him. Trevor. Sitting alone in the corner, hunched over a laptop that had seen better days. He looked so different, older, tired. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a wrinkled button-down and khakis that didn't quite fit right anymore. The confident swagger he used to carry had evaporated, leaving behind a man who looked defeated by life itself. Our eyes met. For a second, I thought about turning around and walking out, but something in me needed this moment, needed to see him face to face and feel absolutely nothing. He stood up slowly, like his body hurt, and walked over to me. "Janelle," he said, and his voice cracked on my name. "Hi, Can we talk? Just for a minute?" I looked at him for a long moment, then nodded toward an empty table by the window. We sat down, and the silence between us was heavy with everything unsaid. "I'm sorry," he started, and I could see tears building in his eyes. "I'm so sorry for everything. I lost everything, Janelle. The business, the money, the respect. I lost it all." I took a sip of my coffee, letting him sit in his own misery for a beat. "No, Trevor," I said quietly. "You didn't lose everything. You threw it away. There's a difference. You made choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to betray the one person who loved you unconditionally. Those were your decisions, and these are your consequences." He wiped at his eyes, looking pathetic. "Do you ever think about what we had? About the good times?" I smiled, but it wasn't cruel. It was just done. "I think about what I tolerated," I said. "I think about how I let myself become small so you could feel big. I think about all the red flags I ignored because I wanted to believe in us. And you know what? I'm grateful. I'm grateful I don't do that anymore." I stood up, gathering my coffee. "I'm grateful that I learned my worth isn't tied to someone else's ability to see it." Trevor looked up at me like I was the sun, and he was freezing in the shade. "Is there any chance? Could we ever—" I shook my head before he could finish. "No. Whatever we were died the moment you kissed her. You can't resurrect what you killed, Trevor." I walked toward the door, and this time I didn't look back. Not even once. I got to my car and sat there for a moment, expecting to feel something. Sadness, maybe, or anger, or that familiar ache of missing what used to be. But all I felt was lightness. Freedom. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there, and someone had finally lifted it off my shoulders. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was Brinley. "Janelle, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need help. Trevor won't stop calling me, showing up at my apartment, leaving messages. He's obsessed. Can you please talk to him? Make him stop?" I stared at that message for a full minute, then I laughed. actually laughed out loud in my car like a crazy person. I typed back, "He's not my problem anymore. He's not my husband, not my responsibility, not my concern. He's yours now. Or he was. Good luck with that." I blocked her number immediately. 2 weeks later, I hosted the launch party for my event planning business. The venue was packed with potential clients, with friends, with people who genuinely celebrated my success. I wore gold that night, a dress that made me feel like victory personified. As I stood there, champagne in hand, surrounded by love and opportunity and the life I'd built from the ashes of my marriage, I realized something profound. Trevor didn't take anything from me that I couldn't rebuild better, stronger, more authentically mine. Imani raised her glass and shouted over the music, "To my sister, who took her power back and never looked back." Everyone cheered, and I felt it in my bones. This was my life now. Not perfect, but real. Not picture perfect for Instagram, but genuinely happy. And somewhere across town, Trevor was probably sitting in that sad apartment, scrolling through old photos, wondering where it all went wrong. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was just beginning, and this time, I was the only author who got to write it. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I learned something better. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's building a life so beautiful, so full, so authentically yours that they realize what they lost, and knowing they can never get it back. Trevor didn't just lose me. He lost himself. He lost his integrity, his reputation, his future. And that's karma's real work. She doesn't just punish, she teaches. And some lessons cost everything. Here's what I want you to remember, and I mean really take this to heart. Never let anyone disrespect you in your own space. Your peace, your dignity, your home, those are sacred. They're yours to protect. And when someone violates that, when someone treats your heart like it's disposable, don't just walk away. Take back everything they thought they'd keep. Your power, your worth, your future. Because you deserve better than crumbs from someone who couldn't see your value. You deserve the whole damn feast. If this story hit you the way it hit me to live through it, do me a favor. Smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life karma stories. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have done what I did? Or would you have gone even harder? I want to know. I'll see you in the next one. And remember this, they always, always underestimate the quiet ones. The ones who smile while they're planning. The ones who wait for the perfect moment. Be that person. Be the one who wins in the end.